We here at the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency rely heavily on the weather experts, the meteorologists, for decision making whenever it is hurricane season. And joining me right now is Miss Joanne Cullen with the National Weather Service right here in Jackson. She's a meteorologist who's going to tell us about the 4 major hazards whenever it comes to hurricanes, and that's wind, tornadoes, floods, and storm surge. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about the 4 major hazards whenever it comes to a hurricane and what people should be aware of with each of those hazards.
Well, there are 4 major hazards for our state from a hurricane: wind, tornadoes, storm surge, and flooding. And just because you don't live on the coast doesn't mean you won't be affected by a hurricane, as most of us have learned over the last several years. Of course, if you're by the coast, you're going to have all sorts of threats. The wind threat, the storm surge threat, the flooding threat, and even the tornadoes. But as you move inland and the storm maintains itself, or even as it starts to decay, we can definitely get a lot of wind and inland flooding and tornadoes from hurricanes.
So what makes a tornado different in a hurricane than maybe severe weather?
Tornadoes in a hurricane are really fast moving. Typically we expect them to come from the west in severe weather season, but in a hurricane, they're going to come up from the east or the southeast. And they're not going to be associated with thunder and lightning. They're going to be really showery, and they're going to happen really, really quickly. And there can be a lot of them in landfalling hurricanes.
And so winds could get up to 150 miles per hour, or lots of damaging winds. And so what should people be aware of? Because they think wind, and they may not think that it's as dangerous as it can be.
Any wind that we get in a landfalling hurricane or tropical system can be just as dangerous as we get during a severe weather season thunderstorm. So they want to prepare themselves, make sure that you cut your trees down or cut limbs back from your home, and just kind of clean up anything that might fall on your home or pose a threat to you or your house.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. Something to keep in mind whenever you are trying to prepare your home is don't cut your trees back the day before the hurricane makes landfall, because you're adding to additional debris. Go ahead and trim them back now while you have a chance to prepare. So I'm glad you mentioned that as well. That's something that a lot of people don't talk about. So wind in a hurricane is also rain-wrapped, correct? Does it make it more dangerous in a hurricane than maybe a severe thunderstorm?
It's very similar. It can be rain-wrapped. It can be outside of the main center of circulation too. And of course, the wind closer to the eye is going to be the strongest, but you can get wind well outside of the center of circulation. So we all need to be cognizant of wind when it comes to a landfalling tropical system.
So storm surge, what makes storm surge so dangerous, and what should people, whenever they're watching the news, listen for whenever our meteorologists are talking about storm surge?
Storm surge is basically the amount of water that moves inland from the hurricane above the normal tide. So it can be several feet above normal tide, which makes it really dangerous and can come in very, very quickly.
It kind of coincides a little bit with storm surge, but we saw with Hurricane Ida last year, states up north had catastrophic flooding from Hurricane Ida, and the storm had already started to weaken by the time it got up there. And so this is definitely for the people who are statewide, not just because you live on the coast. If you live in other parts of Mississippi and during hurricane season, this is something that you should pay attention to as well. Flooding. Can you tell us about some of the dangers that come with a hurricane, such as it begins to weaken and maybe slow down?
One of the worst aspects for a slow hurricane in a weakening hurricane is the flooding. That is, inland flooding is is the biggest danger that we face inland of the coast. As you mentioned, several states inland have gotten severe flooding from decaying and slow-moving hurricanes. So you definitely want to take any of those flash flood warnings that are issued very, very seriously, because hurricanes can just move very slowly or stall and dump several inches of rain over one area.
Is there anything else you would like to add whenever it comes to monitoring and covering and responding to hurricanes?
hurricanes, like all severe weather, you just want to have ways to get your weather information, your trusted sources, the media, your National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, MEMA. You want to follow those trusted sources to get that information and have multiple ways to get warning information as well. Weather radio, your cell phones, TV media, those are all great places to get your weather information, and just have a plan and be prepared.
Well, thank you so much, Joanne, for joining us. And just a quick reminder, Mississippi is covered by 4 National Weather Service offices. We have Jackson, New Orleans, Mobile, and Memphis. And so we encourage everyone to stick with MEMA throughout the week as we continue National Hurricane Preparedness Week and give you tips on how to stay safe as we get ready for June 1, the official start of hurricane season.